Kirsty is joining us. Kirsty, where have you gone? You're over there. I thought you were as Lulu is not available today from Hampshire, and Shamal is over there as well. God, you were there just. Apologies. Shamal is here for Transport for the London, so welcome. And Christine is here for Southampton. Good to see you. And Portsmouth are online, or maybe online.
I don't know whether Peter
we had somebody on the line. I don't know whether that's the Isle of Wight or...
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome to Councillor Fuller. So that's why we've got the hybrid meeting, and we'll talk a bit more about that a bit later on. We have today apologies from Daniel, Riz, Vince Lucas, Dave Hooper, Richard Leonard, Sophie Cox, and Lulu Bauman. And also I saw we had apologies from Matt Bolton last evening, and unfortunately not able to join us today. The meeting will be streamed live to the YouTube channel as always, so that we can watch the meeting back if you have any points you want to pick up on, and it will then go on our website. And if you could just introduce yourself when you speak for the first time, that would be really helpful. So we have a few updates before we get into the main meat of the business. So Rupert, can I ask you to just talk a bit?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Members will be aware there's two parts to this meeting today. There's the sort of normal business which needs to be transacted, and then there'll be a separate session where we'll move into effectively the exclusion of the press and the public. The papers that I sent you on Friday, can I just stress they are confidential for you and your officers, not for sharing. The reason is that clearly the impacts of the DfT's funding letter has an impact on broader staffing complement for Transport for South East. We are joined today by Peter Duggan from the DfT. Unfortunately, Conrad Bailey, the Director General from the department, had hoped to be here, but unfortunately couldn't. However, Councillor Glazier, Councillor Curry, Councillor Dennis, and our two business reps, Daniel and Vince, met with Conrad to effectively hear from him direct and to ask some questions. It just felt sensible that the Chair, Vice Chair and the Chair of Audit and Governance plus our business reps met with him. It might be an opportune moment just to ask Peter to just sort of reaffirm the DfT's position. But if you do have views on the future of Transport for South East, I would ask, please, could you save those until part two of the meeting, where we get to the point where you'll have to vote to go into that part two session, and then members of TfE staff will leave us.
Thank you. Peter, would you just like to say a few words? I mean, we passed back our thanks to Conrad for the meeting. I thought it was very helpful. So anything you can say?
Thank you. So yeah, as Conrad said to Councillor Glazer, Councillor Curry and Councillor Dennis the other day, you're aware that DfT are not going to be funding STBs going forward. There will be some funding available for 26-27, at which time it will end in March 27. Firstly, the first thing to say is it's not a reflection on the performance of TFSC. TFSC have always impressed the Department for Transport with what they've done. We've always had due regard to their reports and their strategies. I think the key decision was taken that the money, all of our revenue funding went straight to local authorities, and that was the decision. It wasn't, like I say, anything against the performance of TFSC. We will continue to engage with TFSC. We hope they'll secure some lot of funding, fair bit of funding for 26-27. Should TFSC wish to continue as an organisation funded by members, we will still have regard to TFSC. We still kind of believe they're a worthwhile group. We're impressed with the work they do to kind of bring all their members together. We still support TFSC. Unfortunately, we will no longer be able to support them financially going forward. Happy to take any questions from anyone.
Any questions that you wanted now? Shall we discuss later and come back to you, Peter, if we may?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So we'll move on to the board meeting and as I say, if you can leave any of the restricted comments until the last part, that would be really, really helpful. So agenda item 2 is the minutes from the previous meeting on the 21st of July. Can we seek an approval as true record? Agreed. Thank you. There were no actions that were raised at that meeting, so the minutes will now be published on the TFSE website. Declarations of interest. Are there any additional declarations that anyone needs to raise today? None? We have no statements from the public, so therefore no answers. That's useful in some ways. Agenda item 5, which is the meat of today's meeting, is the transport strategy. And the reason we've got a hybrid meeting is that the Constitution sets out that we need a majority decision to approve this. And members are weighted, and so at least 75% of the weighted vote must be present at the board. The majority of those present must vote to approve the transport strategy before it's approved. Rupert, how are we doing on weighting?
I believe we got over 75% of the weighted vote with Councillor Fuller online. And for the avoidance of doubt, Section 5.5 of the Constitution allows for virtual attendance and for this type of matter. It's only the AGM that requires physical presence.
So any questions on the Constitution and how we are fixed? No? Well, thank you for that. Mark, are you going to give us an update on how we're doing since the last partnership board, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the purpose of this item, as it says on the slide, is to agree the final version of the transport strategy for the South East. As members will be aware, this strategy has been in development for the last 2 years. So the objective today is to agree the final version. At the last board meeting in July, the board agreed the draft final version of the strategy, which incorporated a number of comments that were received during the 3-month consultation period. Following that meeting, the Isle of Wight, Kent, Portsmouth and Hampshire wished to take the strategy, the draft final version of the strategy, through their own local democratic purposes to sign that final document off. So additional, and the time had been allowed for this in the process, the timetable that we set out right. There was this 3-month period at the end of the process to allow for those local processes to take place. So we have the situation now that the Isle of Wight Council, Portsmouth City Council and Southampton City Council have agreed the draft final version. In relation to Kent, on the 9th of September, the strategy was presented to a meeting of the Kent's Environment, Transport and Cabinet Committee, where a recommendation was agreed to make a recommendation to the leader to endorse the strategy. As we sit here today, that decision has not yet been taken, and once it has been taken, it would be subject to a call-in process for scrutiny. So we have the situation, as we sit here today, that 3 of the 4 councils who wish to endorse the strategy have done so. Following the July meeting, the board agreed the draft strategy, but we extensively proofread the document just to check for spelling mistakes and typos, and a number of very minor changes have been made to the strategy which do not alter the substance, intent or conclusions of the strategy, and a final version of the strategy is presented in Appendix 1 to the report. The integrated sustainability appraisal that sits alongside the strategy was agreed in July 2025, and we've also produced a high-level summary document which can be used for the purposes of promoting the strategy as we move forward. Once the strategy has been agreed, it's our intention to submit it to government, and further information on the publicity and communications activity that we propose, if the strategy is agreed today, will be set out in the communications item which follows later on in the agenda. So in conclusion, we have 3 of the 4 councils who wish to endorse the strategy have done so. One hasn't yet made a decision. As I said, we allowed sufficient time within the original timescale for that process to take place. There was this 3-month period. We believe this is an important strategic document that provides our evidence to government as what the priorities for the South East should be moving forward. And we believe it's important that that should land with the government before we have the mayoral elections in the South East. So it's there in good time to support the mayors in the work that they're going to take forward in terms of developing their local transport plans. So in conclusion, as it says on the slide, the board is recommended to agree the final version of the transport strategy.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Simon.
Thank you very much. Just quick, nothing major on at all because we've fully supported, but obviously you're not mentioning the unitaries on that list up there, so presumably...
No, it was only, so to be clear, there were, everybody's processes are slightly different, but these 4 councils, because of their local constitution, feel it's appropriate for them to take the final version through. All the other authorities were happy to make the decision back in July.
Okay, yep, that's fine, thanks. I was just carrying my own head for that one. Thank you very much. And the other one was just about making, you know, obviously the SIP is going forward and making sure that the maps marry up to everything as well. I'm sure that's in place, but I'm just making that one. I noticed on the map, on the slide I've got here, it mentions the Hoo Peninsula passenger rail access, which is no longer happening, that kind of thing. But I'm assuming all that's in place. So it's just a minor point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comment? Can I just ask a technical, if Councillor Fuller on the Isle of Wight wanted to say something, how would we know? Oh, right. Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Just making sure we can hear and see from you if we need to. You've nothing to say.
Can you see that my hand is raised?
I can't see your hand is raised, but...
Yes, it is.
I can't. Yeah, no, yeah. Please, go ahead. Yes, I can see it surrounded.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It did go to our relevant committee, and I think, you know, it got quite a lukewarm response. I think the view that I have from members of the Isle of Wight is that perhaps it could go further, and it should go further. But other than that, we support the detail of the plan and some of the objectives that is being raised. So I'm very happy to support the plan, and I will be voting in full support of voting on it. So thank you very much. And thank you for your adherence today to let me come over from the Isle of Wight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Trevor.
Thank you, Chairman. So certainly from Brighton and Hove's perspective, we support the plan. I'm very happy to support that today. Just want to make that very clear. And certainly the inputs we've had, how it sits within. We've just over this summer consulted on our city transport plan, the LTP public consultation. We did 12 weeks on that, and so it's very important. It sits within the context of what we're trying to set out as a city. And we very much support the vision and of this. In terms of its implementation, I think there may be some uncertainty because of where we're going, and maybe that's part of the discussion we have later in the meeting. But yeah, so in terms of how it is carried by the different authorities and mayoral street authorities going forward, perhaps that needs some further consideration, but certainly the vision and the aims of this we very much support.
Thank you. Just on that last point, I mean, from my perspective, whilst the mayor may be elected next May, the chances of the mayor taking on the responsibility during that year is pretty remote. So I think that we clearly, just depending entirely on what's said later, will have a role to play at least until 27 when the new unitaries come into play. So I think that getting a strategy in place, and why is that important? Because every Secretary of State up until now has actually agreed to take that as a document that they take into account when making funding investments in the South East. So I think it's important for them to have that and for us to have the knowledge that they agree with that. Anything from anybody else? Anything you need to sum up on? Who are you looking at?
Well, there are copies of the, just to say, there are copies of the strategy available and the summary document which will circulate following the item.
Excellent. So, if there are no other questions or comments, colleagues, are we all happy to support the strategy as the final strategy as printed with the caveats in the recommendation? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark. So we now come to the regional travel survey, and I think Sarah's going to come and introduce that with Joshua in a moment, I think.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So members may recall that we've recently commissioned a regional travel survey for the region to improve our understanding of travel behaviour across the region and to support future transport planning. The survey was designed to capture trip frequency by travel mode and purpose, as well as to record origins and destinations of randomly selected trips. It also sought to identify changes in commuting and leisure trips following the pandemic and to examine how travel patterns vary by key socio-demographic factors such as age, income and car ownership. The survey provides significant additional granularity from the National Travel Survey, which is of course undertaken by the Department for Transport, and it really does present a step change for the region in terms of the data and insight available for future planning. The data dashboards and high-level insight and analysis will be available to all our local transport authorities through our Centre of Excellence, and Report Appendix 1 gives quite a lot of detail about how the survey was carried out and some of the sort of key initial insights. Furthermore, detailed analysis is also possible, and especially where there's the opportunity to combine this regional travel survey with the mobile network data that you may recall we're also procuring. We're already working with West Sussex County Council. The officers have obviously been aware of what we're doing and have identified a user case study for some of the data. So we're already looking at how we can sort of support that and carry out some bespoke analysis for those purposes. And we'd obviously be more than happy to talk to any other of our local transport authorities as well. So I think in summary, it's a massive piece of work, and it really does change the game for the region in terms of the information available. I'd like to hand you over to Joshua Zhao, who's our analysis manager, who led the procurement and work on the regional travel survey, to take you through the approach and also some key findings. It is sort of designed to wet your whistle, as it were, but gives you an indication of what's going on and what further information can be made available to you all.
Thanks, Sarah. For those of you who might at the previous meeting, probably a year ago, when I presented the roadmap for the analytical framework, you may remember I mentioned the data and the evidence base is absolutely the foundation of the whole analytical framework. So that's also the focus of what we've been doing for last year and the major part of this year. So I'm very pleased to come back with this key item, which is a regional travel survey. So in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, I will give you a quick overview on what the survey is about and why it's useful, and show a few key findings, and then finish with some next steps for the board to consider. And as Sarah mentioned, the regional travel survey is really designed to understand how people travel across the Southeast region. And some of you may be familiar with the name of a National Travel Survey. So this survey is really designed close following the National Travel Survey. The limit of National Travel Survey, which is very understandable because it's at a national level, so the sample size at the regional level is very limited, which makes it almost impossible to do meaningful analysis at local level. So we designed the ITS or Regional Travel Survey to closely follow the NTS, National Travel Survey, which means A, we can directly compare our results with the national data, and B, we can enrich that data with a much larger local sample to give us real insights into local patterns. So as you can see on the screen, the survey design include about 20 questions, and we have collected data from over 6,800 individuals, which covering more than 18,000 trips. Just put that into context, at the National Travel Survey, normally for a single year, the sample size for Southeast region is around 2,000 to 3,000 samples. So we basically doubled the sample size. It was carried out originally first online by YouGov in October, November's time. And then when we look at the data, we realized there are some groups, specifically the younger students and lower income household were significantly underrepresented in the samples. So we decided it was necessary to go out again to do an in-person top-up, particularly for those targeted group. So we did an in-person top-up survey in March, April this year in order to make the data fully representative for the region. So just a quick overview on what the key questions we are asking. The method of this survey is called the travel diary survey. So basically meaning we ask people a random day in the past 2 weeks and record all the trips they made during that particular day. So we asked whose travel, things like their age, gender, household size, so on and so forth. And we ask how and why they are traveling. So in particular, the mode of transport, trip purpose, etc. And we also asked where they traveled from and to in the form of origin and the destinations. And last but not least, as Sarah mentioned, we asked how those patterns have changed since the pandemic. So as mentioned, we try to make sure the data is representative both socially and geographically. So what's showing at the moment on the screen is the samples we have collected in the region and how that distribution looks like. And then we compare this with the census population distribution, which is the third column. So as you can see on the screen, they are very well aligned, and which gives us plenty of scope for local analysis. So just before I jump into some of the numbers and examples, it's worth saying a bit more about how this data can be used. And first and most, this is definitely a useful information for transport planning and the investment decision as what it stands. It already contributes to the TFC rail strategy and strategic investment plan refresh. And it also can be used to provide that evidence base to transport strategy at both regional and local level. And it's very useful information for development and land use planning, help people to understand how new housing or jobs might change local travel demand. And it's also very useful for future governance in the sense of understand the catchment area of how people move for work or leisure or any other purpose. And the last but definitely not the least, it's very useful for modeling and analytical tools development, particularly given current shifting of the focus from infrastructure to people. When you're actually trying to modeling people, this kind of behavior data is really valuable. Just moving on to some examples. So for the following examples, I'm going to present, first show you what the openly available data, i.e. the National Travel Survey is available. And then I'm going to show you for more localized case, how the Regional Travel Survey can add more or make a difference. And so the very first set of statistics is related to how much are people traveling and why. I think there's no need to say why this is important for both transport planning and land use planning. So the following number will be expressed in the form of trips per person per year by different purposes. As mentioned, starting from what is currently available in the National Travel Survey, the numbers in the brackets are the number directly quoted from National Travel Survey 2024, and the number outside the brackets are the numbers coming from a Regional Travel Survey. As you can see already at the all-purpose level, the number are remarkably close, which is encouraging and shows the quality of our data. The differences really start when you look at the different purpose segmentations. And this is when the National Travel Survey will have a smaller sample size comparing with the Regional Travel Survey. So while the commuting trips still look really close to what the National Travel Survey says for this region, but when you look at the shopping trips or personal business trips, this including the appointment for either whether this is a banking or the GP, for example, the actual Regional Travel Survey numbers is much higher than what the National Travel Survey estimates. And on the other hand, the business trips actually is much smaller. What is more interesting is the RTS allow us to zoom in to the kind of local level. So when we look at the individual LTAs, the urban areas such as Slough or Windsor and Maidenhead have a much higher trip rates than the regional average, where it's more kind of a mixed of urban and rural areas such as Medway, Hampshire, are much closer to the regional average. And if we look at Isle of Wight, again, it shows something slightly different, but again, aligned with the kind of regional average. So in terms of why people are traveling, and shopping is the most common reason on this table, and followed by commuting and personal business, and as mentioned earlier, business trips on the other hand become less common, possibly because due to the significant increase in remote working pattern. One of the other key questions people might ask, particularly following pandemic, is how those patterns has changed since pandemic. And again, starting from what we know from the NTS data as what shown on the screen and directly quoted from NTS 2024, the personal travel in 2024 remains similar to 2023 and therefore has not yet returned to pre-pandemic trends. This is useful, but it doesn't really explain what happened or what has changed. So in the Regional Travel Survey, we ask specifically people how the travel has changed for different purposes. So take commuting as an example. So around 10% people says they are traveling before, but they are not traveling at all now. And then just slightly over 30% of the people says they are traveling less. And about around 40% of people saying that there's no much differences before or after. And also interestingly, roughly 15 to 20% of the people saying they actually need to travel more for commuting purpose. The pattern is quite similar if you look at the local level. And I guess overall, this data confirming what people kind of anticipating or feeling the commuting trip in overall is reducing, because less people, more people travel less than people traveling more. So just to look at another purpose leisure, which including shopping trips, so it's probably another anticipation from people saying when people have more time, they probably make more other trips rather than just commuting. But from the data we have collected, we can see about almost 60% of people doing exactly the same or almost the same as before. The people actually travel less is about the same as people travel more. So looking at the overall level, the total trips for the leisure purpose should be fairly consistent. And again, this is quite similar at a local level, probably with one or two assumptions on this chart. If you look at Southampton, there seems to be slightly more people travel more than the people travel less. So the next one, which is also something people would be very interested to understand, is how people are traveling, in particular the mode of transport. And this is particularly important for transport planning or even local plan in terms of how to encourage people to shift towards more sustainable travel mode in the sense of either decarbonization or consider the impact on the environment. And again, starting from the what we know already from the NTS data, and as you can see on the screen, is the numbers are broadly aligned, and the RTS number showing slightly lower number on people who actually work for different purpose to different destinations than what the NTS estimates for this region. For the car user, actually, it's quite similar if you're combining the both car van driver with the passengers. The only difference is the RTS showing there's much more drivers than the NTS says, and vice versa for the passenger, which this seems to suggest is that there's probably more single occupancy cars on the road in this region than what the national average saying about. But so far this number or the differences probably doesn't look too impressive. And again, let's move into the local. And as you probably anticipate, the context matters in this case, and urban areas such as Portsmouth, Brighton, Hove, and Reading have a much higher share of sustainable modes, while the area, mixed kind of areas such as East Sussex and Bracknell Forest are much closer, again, to the regional average, with probably just slightly higher car share. And in the survey, we asked people why are they not using any other modes. You take the car and the van driver as an example. The top answers were it's quicker and it's more convenient, followed by the costs is cheaper and more reliable and more flexible, of course, if you're using car. And these are probably the reasons everyone would all expect, but this highlights the challenges to make the alternatives generally competitive to cars. And in order to do that, you probably need to consider the travel by different purpose and by different mode distance, and even by maybe consider who is traveling. And the good news is all those information is available in the travel survey. So just very quickly showing another example when look at who is traveling. And on this screen, the chart breaks down again the number of trips by mode and then by household income quintile. So the quintiles range from the lowest 20% on the left, which shown in the dark blue, to the top 20% on the right, which showing in the light blue. And you can see clearly that particularly for the private transport modes such as cars or the motorcycle, higher income groups make noticeably more trips. And in the contrast, as you would expect, the lower income quintile make the most public transport or working trips. And the trips for all modes is pretty much driven by the private transport mode. And then people wonder how far people would travel. This is, again, as mentioned in the early, this is particularly relevant to the future governance under the context of devolution, when people actually want to understand their residents, how far they would travel for different purposes. Again, here I just use commuting trips as an example to demonstrate what this data can do. So this chart shows the average number of commuting trips per person per year across different distance bands. From on the left-hand side is short distance trips, all the way to the right-hand side, the longer distance trips, which over 100 miles or so. And the lighter colors represent data from the National Travel Survey for the Southeast region, and the darker kind of color shows the same statistic, but from the Regional Travel Survey. And each color represents a different mode of transport. For example, the green, whether light or dark, represent active travel, and the red-orange is for the public transport, and the blues for the private transport. Again, as you can see, the two data sets are generally well-aligned, and in particular, active travel modes are really a feasible option. Only the trips are under 5 miles, and while the public transport becomes more competitive as the distance increases. There are, however, some differences in the two data sets as well. Generally speaking, the longer distance commuting trips in this region is actually more than what the National Travel Survey data estimates. And also for the short distance trips, particularly under 2 miles, there's more public transport trips appeared on the data. I know it's fairly abstract so far, so we plot the data on the map as a flowchart using West Sussex as an example. So what's showing on the map is the red dots represent the district where people start their journeys from. So as you can see, all those red dots are within the West Sussex County. And both red and blue dots show where the trips travel to. And remember, this is only for commuting trips. And the size of the dots reflect the total number of the commuting trips coming into this into each district. So the bigger the dots, the more trips coming into its district. And the thickness of the lines shows the flows. So the thicker the line, the heavier the volume is. As you can see on the map, most commuting takes place within the county, which is why all the red dots are bigger. But you can also already see some emerging kind of a key destination outside of the county for people who are actually living in the West Sussex County, such as Brighton and Hove, Portsmouth, and even in Westminster, where we are now at the moment. And this type of information isn't available or isn't easily available from National Travel Survey data, again, due to the sample size. And I guess something worth mentioning at this point also is the RTS data are also kind of sampled data. So we don't expect it covers everything. So that's the reason why Sarah mentioned that we are also procure the mobile network data, which have a much larger coverage and sample size. And by combining those different samples data together, we will get a more complete picture on where and how people travel in this region. And the last set of data is regarding where people are, when people are traveling. And this is a very interesting question for both planning and modeling. As some of you may be familiar, traffic planning and modeling have traditionally focused on what's so-called peak hours. And one of the key questions people keeping asking since the pandemic is whether this peak hour concept still stands given the increased flexibility in where and when people travel. So what we did, we plot the first the full-time workers when they travel. As you can see on the screen, the morning peak and the evening peak, you can still see the morning peak and the evening peak as what they normally considered, although the evening peak is much flatter. And when you plot the part-time works on top of it, and then you can see the evening travel pattern become even flatter because of the part-time worker maybe travel during the school pickup time. And what is interesting, when you actually plot all the retired people and students on top of everything, and then you can see actually the pattern shows an extended morning peak starting from 8 a.m. and to the midday, and then gradually declining through the afternoon. This might explain why the roads may feel always busy when you're going out, regardless any time in the day. Once again, this is a sampled data, so we wouldn't expect it to represent the full population exactly. However, it does raise a genuine question for planners or decision makers on whether the traditional kind of peak hour approach still fit for current pattern, which I think something need to be investigated further. So just quickly sum up, we think the regional travel survey shows patterns that are broadly consistent with the national travel survey, but with a much larger sample that finally allow us to properly examine local differences. This makes it a powerful tool for developing local transport and planning strategies and the modeling as well. In terms of next step, as mentioned, the data is already being used internally by TFC, and we will be sharing the findings more widely, including through a launch session planned for early November, where we will go through more details and on the methodology and explain how to access the data. We are currently preparing fact sheet for both overall TFC area and for the smaller area, typically a group of LTAs, and we will share those once they are available. And we are also exploring collaboration opportunities with universities and the DFT, including using DFT's synthetic population to generate regional travel behavior data based on the sample data. And finally, I hope you all agree these data sets provide valuable insights, but good data depends on two things. First, we need a large enough sample size, which is what we managed to achieve here. And secondly, it needs to keep it up to date. What will make this even more valuable is regularly monitoring and tracking how travel behavior changes over time. Therefore, we are seeking the board to approve to make this biennial, give the insights it provides and economic of scale we are achieved here. So I will stop here and happy to answer any questions people may have.
Joshua, thank you very much. Questions, comments? Trevor?
Good, Chairman. Thank you, Joshua, for a very deep presentation, a lot of data there, a huge amount of work, so I value that, and thank you. About 3 questions, actually. So you recognised the YouGov online approach had some gaps, and you went chasing those more in a targeted way. Do you feel that you managed to capture a reasonable representation from the young and some of the social groups that you referenced there? One of the key questions I'm going to pursue with you is mode of transport. Did you include walking within this, or was it very much the more regional, much larger scale things? I want to know whether how you capture walking, particularly around urban areas, within this assessment. And you mentioned the sample size, and it is a good sample size, as you refer to, but I'm aware that, that with the mobile data, which you have to purchase, that's a much bigger scale thing, and our main bus operator in our city has decided to purchase that data to evaluate their strategy. We don't have access to that as an authority, but there's some, we work with them in terms of how some of their thinking in terms of implementation. So I think there is perhaps a case to consider whether to bring in some of that data, but I appreciate there's a cost potentially around that. So I don't know how we would take that forward. But yeah, broadly, I certainly welcome this. And the other broad question, I don't know how to sort of frame this one, but in terms of using this in terms of strategy for implementation, is it a bit self-fulfilling? So if there isn't an alternative to the road, then your data will show most people choose to drive. So, for instance, if there was a direct train link between Brighton and North Kent, for example, then people may be more prone to say, I'll get a train. But at the moment, it takes 3 to 3.5 hours to get to North Kent, Maidstone, from Brighton, whereas it takes an hour and a half, that sort of time, to do the same journey by car. And so there's a self-fulfilling aspect to this, and we want to understand how that's used. But also you referenced West Sussex in relation to the number of people coming to our city in Brighton and Hove. And again, you know, if there was a stronger, improved bus services, we've got good bus services, but it could be improved further, would more people be prone to take the bus, or is it very much self-fulfilling that the data shows people want to drive, therefore we must build infrastructure to reflect the car? I mean, how do we use this data to actually encourage people to have modal shift away from the car, for instance? So lots of questions there.
And rather than going too deep,
yeah,
we've got a really long agenda. I suggest that Trevor and yourself have a conversation offline. But if you want to give any early thoughts,
yeah, sure.
Succinctly.
Yeah. I will cover the easy one, which is a YouGov one. And so when we look at the data, we realize there's underrepresentative of the younger and the low-income group. So we decided to go out in person, and by doing it in person, which allowed us to be more targeted. So actually we went out to particularly survey for younger students in particular, and the low-income group. So by then, which I can't show on the screen, but we do have that number comparing, like we comparing the overall population, we comparing the percentage of students and the low-income group with our samples. It's fairly close as what you saw for the overall distribution of the population. So we are quite happy with the data. It's representative, particularly at the regional level and the sub-regional level, in terms of represent the younger group of people. So for the mode working, this is coming back to the method of survey, because we ask people what kind of trip you made on a random day during the last 2 weeks, and what kind of mode you used. So we surveyed from there. So they said, I walk to the working place, I walk to my university, then that tick the box, the main mode is work, so that covered. And which link to the next question, this is a very different type of survey comparing with mobile network data, because mobile network data pretty much by looking at where the signals are and kind of guess what people are doing, whether you are driving in the car, you are walking, but this is asked directly. So two data complement each other. So it's exactly our plan to combine those two different data together. And last one, very, very quickly, we do collect the reason why people not use the other mode. So that would be very good starting point to understand how to make the other mode more competitive, or as where you mentioned, a real feasible alternative for the cars. So, yeah.
If I could just add to that, the mobile network data, so we do in procurement of the mobile network data right now, which will then be available to everybody as part of that. So, yeah, that's
Thank you.
covered as part of this year's business plan.
Please get in touch with Joshua. I mean, the information's there, and it's good to know what's there. So thank you very much for your presentation. I don't see any other hands. Joy?
Just a quick one to say that obviously we won't be checking ourselves against others, because it's like comparing apples and oranges, so comparing some of the counties and unitaries against each other. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be a league table, so that's fine.
Thank you very much. So we're asked to comment, which we've done, on the regional strategy and endorse the proposed next steps. Are we happy to do that? Thank you very much. Sarah, you're going to take us into the State of the Region report.
I will do. I'll just move closer to the laptop if that's okay. So, yes, this report is presenting to you the updated State of the Region report and seeking your agreement to it, and then its publication on the website. So just most of the detail is within the report, but in 2023 we published the inaugural State of the Region report, and this was designed to provide an overview of how the region is doing in terms of big picture metrics that the transport strategy seeks to influence. It's not necessarily a how is TFSE doing, because those metrics are affected by an awful number of things. For example, in 2020, car use, journeys by car absolutely fell, which is in line with what the transport strategy would like. However, of course, it had nothing to do with the transport strategy. It was because of the pandemic. So there is a word of caution around this, but this seeks to provide those big picture overviews. So the report has been updated on the latest data that's now available. And just a couple of things to draw your attention to. Firstly, that we've done this predominantly in-house. We did need a small amount of help from our consultants due to software licensing, but aside from that, it's been prepared in-house by the TFSE team due to the sort of increased capability capacity that we have within the team. Also, the document has been prepared to be viewed online, so it's an interactive document. I do a couple of screenshots there. What you have in your appendix is a printout of that interactive document, but the real one itself you can actually go into and you can explore the graphs. If I do that very, very quickly, hopefully this will work. So this is now the online version of the report. Some of the really good data we can do, we have static graphs, as you can see, but one of the really nice graphs that we have got is around accessibility to airports. It will take a moment just to load up. Hopefully it will do it. Okay. Here we go. So we have diagrams such as this one, where we can have a slider. So the darker colours again are the current situation, the lighter colours are the situation in 2023, and we can go in and explore. Some of the other graphs, particularly around the social exclusion, so how people's access to transport is affected by where they live and their social demographics. Again, this one should load. This will take a little while because this is very... What you can do with this one is zoom in to different places within the map. I'll give up with the fact that it's actually... Here we go. So we can start zooming in and exploring the data. So the advantages of doing this online makes it much more interesting. It allows people to interact with it and find the information that they want. So in sort of terms of conclusions, There has been a decrease in the amount of carbon dioxide emissions from transport, quite possibly as a result of the COVID pandemic, but in the years since it hasn't actually increased back up to those pre-COVID levels, so that's quite an interesting takeaway. The amount of EV uptake across the region, there's a nice interactive graph you can go into there as well, has considerably increased across the last few years. However, this transport-related social exclusion, for example, does still show that we've got a long way to go, and people, particularly in rural areas, just don't have access to the kind of transport they want. So, in summary, if I can access out of that and go back to the other presentation. So here we go. Testing my skills here. The board are asked to agree to the publication of the 2025 report on our website in its form of an online version. Obviously, there is that printout version which will be made available to anybody who contacts us with accessibility issues and requires that static version.
Again, an awful lot of work going in there and an awful lot of information available online. We just need to ensure as many people are aware of it as we possibly can. Are there any questions or comments? Simon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Keith. Thank you very much for that. Just to say what a great report this is. It's so full of information that it's kind of hard to pick it all out. But it also, I think, highlights what this group is all about, really, in terms of identifying on this scale what the issues are. I picked out a couple of things. One is in relation to the, you talked about the vulnerable people and stuff and access that they've got. That really is very valuable information indeed, because that's one of our key drivers, if you like. But the other thing was picked out as well was about the train operating punctuality and how that's a real challenge ahead of us. And I think we're best placed to address that. Of all the how you look at that and how you deal with something like that. So there's that kind of details in there, and I'm presuming this will be on the Centre of Excellence availability through that and everything like that. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of things.
Absolutely, and that accessibility piece of work, that was something led by Transport for the North, so our STB colleagues up in the North, and again shows sort of the great work that STBs coming together can do as well. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sorry. Yes, please, and then I'll come to you, John. Over to you. Paul, are you there? Can you hear us? Oh. Sorry, I'm calling you without my mic on. Apologies. Your turn. Over to you. You obviously can't hear us. Yes.
Yes, to me.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear you call me. Sorry, Chairman. The question I wanted to ask was, you've got international airports, and I know it is outside our region, but then Heathrow is outside our region as well. But a lot of people from Hampshire and the Isle of Wight uses Port Bournemouth International Airport as well. And why is there no data concerning Port Bournemouth, when a lot of people in our area would use that as their regional airport because the flights are quite extensive from that destination? Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to answer that one? Then I'll come to John.
I think it's certainly not a deliberate oversight to cut off that part of the geography. I think it's just that the original data was done with the international gateways and ports and airports that have been identified through sort of the earlier work, and the ones that Heathrow is very difficult. It is very, very close to our border, so that's why that one is included, and obviously it's so big, but the others were just ones that were literally within the geography. So it's not a deliberate attempt to cut you off, and I'm sure we could do the analysis if you would like to see the analysis for Bournemouth as well.
I was going to say that Bournemouth is also very, very close within our geography. It's 15 minutes drive away from Hampshire.
Yeah. Okay, well, point made and point taken.
Thank you.
John?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. John Ennis, I'm representing the council representing Berkshire. I just want to make a point about 3.3, 3.4. Slightly disappointing, really. It just shows you the challenge we've got on the percentage of income spent on transports going up, and also the fare increase, which includes rail, which is rail particularly. The buses, very welcome drop, wasn't it, for that period,
Yes.
and it's slowly going back.
Yeah.
But rail fare, it shows, doesn't it, that the challenge we've got, and I think most people that we talk about in the, particularly the Reading area, would like to use the train, but they can't because it's too expensive.
Yeah, I think you're
It shows
right.
it there.
Yeah, so obviously the drop in the bus was as a direct result of the £2 bus cap, which has now risen to £3, hence why it's gone back up again. And absolutely, this demonstrates the challenges the area faces, and obviously the transport strategy that's just been approved, has measures within that, as will the strategic investment plan that we're currently refreshing to, try to reverse those costs.
Joy.
Quick one again, and that is just to say it'll be interesting to see when, if you can, look at the impact of the BSIT fundings on DDRTs around the rural areas, and whether the demand is what people think it really is.
Okay, again, I'm sure that's noted, helpful. We have the recommendations on the screen. Are we happy to approve as printed? Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Agenda item 8, which is, Mark, intermodal freight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The purpose of this item is to ask the Board to agree the TFSE's Intermodal Rail Freight Interchange Study Report. So essentially, these are the vital bits of infrastructure that enable freight to be transshipped from road onto rail, obviously a key part of logistics operations. And the TFSE Freight and Logistics Gateway Strategy identifies us that this is one of the key challenges that we face in the South East in terms of lack of these facilities, in terms of particularly now we have the government having set a target for 75% growth in freight by 2050. So clearly a key challenge. So the purpose of the study was to understand the current position in the South East in terms of the provision of these facilities, and obviously look for opportunities to either expand existing ones or potentially look for sites for new facilities. The report identifies a number of the key challenges, which is obviously the lack of available land and available sites where the road and the railway network intersect. And some of the challenges with the planning process, and just a general lack of awareness amongst local authorities about the need for these facilities and the importance that they play, the important role they play in achieving modal shift from road to rail. A number of potential opportunity areas are identified in the report, potential locations for these facilities, either new sites or potential to expand existing ones. And in terms of the recommendations sort of set out in the report or the study, obviously the key need to increase the awareness amongst local planning authorities, local transport authorities about the need for these facilities. A need to speed up the planning process if we can by using other mechanisms to get these facilities in place and agreed. Something for TFSE to think about moving forward is hosting a round table event, bringing together those potential providers of these facilities and other stakeholders to sort of try and, if we can, identify a way forward with this issue, which is so important to getting this modal shift. Other things for TFSE to think about moving forward, working with government to increase the profile of these facilities, getting them recognised as critical pieces of infrastructure, and also the challenge about data availability and utilisation. So a good piece of work, I would suggest, to trying to move this important issue forward, and members of the Partnership Board are asked to agree the Intermodal Rail Freight Interchange Study Report.
Thank you, Mark. Questions, comments? First, Mark, and then I'll come to Trevor.
Thank you. Mark Potter, I'm the Deputy Chair of the Mark Potter, I'm the Deputy Chair of the South Downs National Park, representing protected landscapes. Just some comments here from colleagues that have prepared for me. So I'm not pretending to be an expert. It's my first meeting on the board, so hello everybody. Welcoming the potential benefits to things like decarbonisation, increased accessibility and local investment. There's some slight concerns here that the previous warehousing study had some blind spots when it came to protected landscapes. Most of the areas noted to be deficient in warehousing capacity are within protected landscapes, and it wasn't acknowledged within the study. There's also a suggestion to use permitted development rights to speed up the planning processes, and there's some concerns around this within protected landscapes because circumventing the planning processes to facilitate heavy industrial and warehousing development is a worrying precedent, especially as the previous strategy did not acknowledge protected landscapes. So obviously want to engage further with it. Thank you.
I'm sure again that's noted and very important. Trevor, then I'll come to Kirsty.
Certainly, yeah, thank you for Mark for your presentation. Certainly welcome this. I think it's a very healthy thing to get more freight onto rail where possible. Put in the context of Brighton and Hove, we have the two ports close to us, namely Newhaven and Shoreham. I know some, particularly Newhaven, there's a good railway connection. Shoreham is less so, possibly that you referenced the availability of land to build a connection and siding, etc., for the railway. But I think, put it in a strategic context, there are constraints on our railway system within Sussex to enable that freight to get through, because they're very busy lines and often not really capacity to allow the freight onto that system. So do you think this strategy not only recognises the drive to get more freight onto rail, but actually the strategic log jams within that system, what needs to be really tackled to open up more resilience, more routes for rail to get from our ports?
Yes, I mean, that is another constraint is the lack of capacity on the network. I mean, this study was particularly focused on these interchanges. We do have the rail strategy, which is currently under development as well, which will give wider consideration to that capacity issue that you've raised.
Kirsty and then Joy.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for having me today. I represent Andover, so I was keen to see Andover is number 6 in your potential opportunity area for interchange development. As a county councillor and a borough councillor and a cabinet member of both, I've never heard this before, so I definitely support the notion of discussing that further with the local authorities, because I'm not sure how much has been done to date, and there could have been things that we could have potentially helped with along that process. So, and an offer to help in any way that I can to bring that to fruition locally.
Thank you. I'm sure that's noted. Joy?
And I was just going to follow on from Councillor Mooton's point about cars. I think that's a word I used earlier in a meeting, which is the work that's needed at the Croydon network rail point, am I correct? Yeah. Presumably that would be dependent on such as the Crawley goods yard being lifted up to a green rather than an amber, I presume. So as Councillor Mooton made point, sometimes there's other issues that are putting these down the track slightly, to excuse the pun.
I think that's right, but actually, having looked at it, I mean, the fact that, as far as I can see, the amount that's been identified as being appropriate and needed is there in one report, which I don't think existed before we started this. So I think if we just keep working our way through that, ultimately, people will join in and we'll get what we need. They'll then come down to who's going to fund it all, of course. But we won't worry about that today. Any other comments or questions? Anything else you want to add, Mark? So we have the recommendations on the screen. Are we happy to agree as printed? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. That's over to you now, Councillor Dennis. Audit and Governance Committee.
Get the paper back in front of me. And let's just get it up in front, sorry. Okay, thank you for everybody who attended the recent Audit and Governance Committee meeting, which was held just a couple of weeks ago. Just want to highlight that we did raise and give some consideration to what was a very, at that time, the letter was very fresh in our inboxes on the DFT's decision on the future funding of TFSC. So we gave a little light, as well, say very light. It was likely discussed it as a restricted item at the end of them, and obviously it will be discussed later on in the restricted item at the end of this meeting, so I don't think there's any point in saying any more, but obviously many of the points that we made were picked up. We also highlighted potential changes to the TFSC's constitution and inter-authority agreement as a result of local government reorganisation and devolution. This was an early review of what changes may be needed and what will be brought to the Partnership Board for agreement at the right time. There have to be some fluidity and flexibility given the fact that there has been no formal decisions made at this moment in time, though some might be sooner rather than later. I just want to highlight that internal audit, we requested the internal audit look at the TFSC governance financial management controls, and the internal audit team at East Sussex undertook that. It highlighted that TFSC delivers good practice and provided TFSC with a view of reasonable assurance. 2 actions that were given as part of the audit had now been implemented. There were only the 2 actions, which were to update the Partnership Board Register of Members' Interests and ensure management sign-off of expenditure is appropriately documented. It wasn't the rule, it was just a number of exceptions. And that process has been amended. We reviewed the risks at the meeting. The scores for a number of the risks, both looking at likelihood and impact, were reviewed and changed, particularly following the DFT's funding decision, but there's further work to obviously take place. The risk register won't be presented to you until the January meeting because it's a biannual presentation. So you'll see many of our comments coming through then. The committee also reviewed the TFSC finances. We were comfortable with the work that TFSC had done on these finance forecasts and assigned each forecast a confidence rating, and you'll be receiving the full finance update, I think, in the next agenda item. And that was it. Thank you.
Can I start by thanking you and the committee, because the amount of work and the thorough way you attack it gives us all confidence that these things are being constantly reviewed. Questions or comments? No? In that case, I think I'll say it again. It really does leave us in a good light when we have an external audit and only have a couple of points raised. I think that's a credit to all of you, so well done. And the team, of course, that deliver the services in the first place. We have the recommendation there. Are we happy to approve? Thank you. So we come to agenda item 10, which is the finance update. And Keir, I think you're going to introduce, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll try and do a brief update because, as Councillor Dennis has mentioned, the Audit and Governance Committee have reviewed all our finance information and the forecasts. The paper just goes into a bit of detail. It sets out that we've spent just under £1 million at the end of September against a total budget that the Partnership Board agreed of £3.8 million. That's broadly in line with our expectations. We usually increase spending as the year goes on because we only pay for work once it's finished. So that is about where we expect it. We have forecast our expenditure for all our work at the end of the year, and that forecast is slightly lower than the original budget. So we're forecasting just over £3.2 million of expenditure. And the paper goes into more detail about why that is, but broadly it's because as we scope work, we find out the actual price from suppliers, and some of the work is slightly cheaper than we first profiled. Some of it, there's some work where we think we can do it in a smarter way. So an example of that is on future mobility and active travel, where we were going to do kind of new strategy document type stuff. We're now going to deliver that through the Centre of Excellence using that budget. So hopefully that'll be helpful, more helpful for officers, but also is a bit of a cost saving as well. So that's probably everything to say.
Thank you, Keir. Again, questions, comments, your opportunity. Looking good, I think. So again, thank you, and thank you all for keeping us on track. We have to, we've gone on to the next one, right. Well, we'll go back to the members of the Partnership Board are recommended to note the financial position to the end of Q2 25-26. Are we happy to do that? Agreed. Thank you. Responses to consultation. Rupert.
Thank you, Chairman. As members know, these are an opportunity for the board to ratify or agree responses to consultations. More often than not, the deadline for consultations lands between board meetings, so we just bring them back here for your agreement, and consultations that we do put up, we explain to whoever we're responding to that it's an officer response subject to board agreement. So the three areas for considering today. One is response to the South Downs National Park Partnership Management Plan. I should say in summary that their plan is broadly aligned with Transport to the South East aspirations. A lot of interrelated areas, particularly on sustainable transport provision, and sharing commitments to dealing with carbon emissions, promoting active travel, and collaboration. There is a draft officer response is Appendix 1. The second consultation is response to the Isle of Wight's fourth local transport plan. Again, local transport plan is broadly in alignment with the Transport for South East evidence base. We would suggest that there would be merit in making reference to the Transport for South East transport strategy as part of the LTP. I think that would be desirable and adds weight to your evidence base and ensures that the LTP not only just affects the island effectively, but maximise those opportunities for regional support through Transport South East. And then the final one is a response to the House of Commons Transport Select Committee entitled Joined Up Journeys, Achieving and Measuring Transport Integration. And I think the major points they were picking up there was that integration is at the heart of the things that we do. There needs to be far greater emphasis on designing a transport system that works as a whole for people and places and the economy. And that integration aspect needs to be embedded in this sort of appraisal mechanisms for securing funding. So it's those three responses to the consultation.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
Thanks, Chair. It's actually with the third one that I have the issue with, to be honest. The multi-ticketing and everything, absolutely fine. I'm afraid it's the references, although not explicitly stated, to franchising I have a real issue with. As particularly using the examples where you have Manchester, their franchising has not been successful, their latest round. The same 4 operators have all just moved around the depot. That hasn't actually delivered any sort of benefit of services. So for me, I wouldn't be able to agree that one until all the references with franchising are removed. And the idea that you need that single governance structure to do that, enhanced partnerships work extremely well, where you've got, where actually the local authority and the operators are working very well together. I do think we just need to be careful on this, particularly with what the government is proposing about forcing franchising on areas as well.
Okay. You support that, right? Do you want to come back on that, Rupert?
No, I mean, I absolutely understand that in certain areas franchising is not an appropriate model. For one, franchising requires funding. And for local authorities that, well, all of us in the South East have pressures on finance, particularly in rural areas, or those areas that have large rural communities. It's a challenge, and I would agree with you, enhanced partnerships work well. However, in certain areas, franchising does offer an opportunity, generally with more high-density urban areas, and is a conversation, to my mind, between operators and local transport authorities. It's also worth noting that franchising powers where mayoral strategic authorities are to be established is one of the powers that a mayor effectively has. But I think it is different for different places. I am happy to make a change to that.
If you could please, I think it's because it reads as support for franchising across. But I take your point, in cities, yes, it can work, but in other areas it doesn't. I mean, Manchester has 4 operators, Surrey has 22, so it's a very different picture.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments or questions? Joy, sorry, comments, questions, Joy.
Yeah, I also had a sort of question around the sort of behavioural change that's required, and how that would be undertaken, or are the expectations of the timescales on that?
In terms of the Select Committee report?
Yeah.
I'm not aware. I mean, it's for the Select Committee to, form a view on evidence given.
Okay.
We know that behavioural change takes, a long time to shift. I mean, some of the evidence that Joshua was sharing with you from the Regional Travel Survey showed that it was a certain thing that made that push for people to change their behaviour, and that thing, as we know, was pandemic. So behavioural shift is not a short-term thing, it's a longer-term thing, and I would expect the committee to form some views on what that might look like.
That's super, thank you. And I'd also like to make a comment on the first one, the South Downs National Park one as well, particularly around the busing in services in the rural areas, particularly in the South Downs National Park. Because if, looking at it specifically where we have put our BSIP programming is specifically only within the South Downs National Park, it has been used within the community rather than as a leisure, and I wonder whether there's a confusion here between leisure and actually people living in the park, so whether there needs to be a distinct split between the two, because there are very different reasons for trips, and having just spent hours looking at it just in the last few weeks, I think there needs to be a split between what's leisure driven and what's non-leisure driven.
Yeah, I think the South Downs is quite unusual, or not unusual, unique as a national park, in the sense that there's some quite significant corridors that run through it, and some of those corridors will be used for commuting. And it's interesting to see things like the I think it's the Booker bus in West Sussex, the demand responsive transport, and how those form a way in which people in more rural communities can get about. I'm not sure how, given the nature of the corridors that run through the national park, how to easily distinguish between commuting. It comes back to some of Joshua's stuff, and things like use of mobile phone data, which can start to give you information on how people are travelling and when they're travelling and all those kinds of things. Just thinking about how you would want me to reflect that in the consultation response.
Yeah, it's really difficult. If I think about some of the really obvious stuff, like, if you want to go up to Devil's Dyke, for example, and what bus route you would use there, but what else would it service? Yeah. Just an obvious one that you're probably more familiar with, yeah.
I think, the broad thing for me on the National Park Management Plan is, it's for them to espouse on what they wish to see within the South Downs National Park. Clearly, having regard to what the Local Transport Authority and the National Park spreads across a number of local transport authorities who will have slightly differing LTPs. I think what I like about the response in the plan is they're clearly, understandably focused on sustainable travel. That's got to be a good thing. I think there's a number of ways in which you can do that. Some of it comes back to your point about behaviours. Good walking and cycling provision within the national park. I know that's something that you're keen on pushing. But also, less reliance on the private car. Now that is sort of slightly counterintuitive, because we know in the rural areas that the private car is the only way that people can get about, and hence your DDRT type responses. So we can make some broad reference in that, around the challenges in our response, if that is is helpful. I think I was just looking to Mark as well. To see if there's
Yeah,
anything-
I was just trying to split out that between those that live there and those that want to go in and walk.
Yeah.
But most of the people who go in to do walking will actually drive in. To go to the park and then walk, yeah.
Yeah, some
Unless
will
there are
go
specific
trainers.
services laid on, you know, there's the Rambler service that operates in the summer that goes between Winchester
Yeah,
and
and there's one that runs
Huddersfield.
through from Brighton into the sort of Downs area as well.
But I do think, just on that point of disaggregating the data between the different groups, it's nigh on impossible unless you're sat there checking what people are wearing, you know, and where they're coming from, you know.
Oh dear. John.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on number one because, you know, it's not my area, but we had a cycling meeting, the cycle campaign in Reading. We had the National Trust person, the national officer from National Trust, who was talking about the need to get cycling. And the data that he had, in fact, backs up the situation that leisure is now providing more private transport. And now in Reading, we're spending a lot of time on commuting in Berkshire, and yet we're not necessarily really looking too much. And yet our emissions is down during the week and up at the weekends. Yeah. And also, so that really is important point that we may be looking more at going forward. Yeah. Because we do, I'm not saying we're concentrating all, but we are concentrating a lot, I'm hearing, on commuting. And not leisure.
And it's interesting, we go back to earlier in the meeting, we were talking about stats. And actually it said shopping. Well, I would argue that most of those people doing the shopping are actually doing it for leisure. Yeah. They're not doing it to actually go and do the big shop. They're doing it for leisure and going out to buy a couple of bits and actually going out and having lunch, coffee, whatever.
Can I come back? I was going to make that point. The regional data actually is backing up the increase in leisure. Since COVID.
It feels, Chairman, I need to get Joshua to give you another 2-hour teaching.
Yeah.
So the bit on leisure, absolutely spot on. You could see that from the charts that you were seeing there. The other interesting thing is how the peak, the commuting peak has changed, and you're seeing still a fairly pronounced morning peak, but it shallows off. It's not, you know, the evening peak isn't once what it was. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of changes. And I think, you know, coming back to the bit we were talking about, the Southwest National Park, I mean, I would agree, it is really difficult to get that information on who's doing what and where and when.
I think the stats that we're looking at is proving quite interesting.
Well, I think as we grow that potentially is really helpful, both the regional transport strategy, and, you know, it's good news that the board agreed that we need to keep going on that. But once we bring in mobile phone data, and as Joshua was saying, that complements the regional transport set, you'll be able to get better granularity to help us have, you know, help you and help us have more informed discussions.
Have you got enough?
I have, thank you.
I mean, that's really helpful to bring those points out. So, thank you. And we're going to, are we going to agree what's up there with the caveats? That
I may change to franchising.
Councillor Fuller.
Okay, Councillor Fuller, sorry. Come along. Yes, please.
I heard you that time. I'm actually a bus user myself on the Isle of Wight, and we're certainly seeing what was reflected in the studies earlier on. A lot more people are travelling by bus, but what we're seeing is that they are the over 60s, pensioners. A lot of people that visit sort of like the coastal communities, the national parks, what used to be the areas of national beauty, are older people. And I think because they have their free bus passes, they're taking advantage of that. And we see a very, very large proportion of older people using their free bus passes because the bus is free, they can get off, they can walk, they can have a coffee, they can go shopping, and that is perhaps how public transport is changing. Now I commute by bus, but I'm sort of like in the minority, and absolutely support what was being said just now about the importance of trying to gauge and support those people using buses for leisure. And maybe cheaper bus fares is the way forward. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I'm sure we'll all be looking at subsidised bus services one day. I think it was 1998 or something was the last. Moving on. Thanks for that. You've got enough to. We'll agree that with the caveat. We're now at a point where all the next items are for information, and I'm in your hands. We can have an introduction to each of one of them, or we can call off anything that anyone wants. Because I know that the team have put a lot of work into preparing the reports and are prepared to speak to them. How do you want to play this from here on in? We've got.
Straight to questions.
Just take questions as we go. You all right with that, team?
Yeah.
Is there anything specific in there
I
that
think
you
the
really...
analytical framework and the SIP refresh.
Okay, we'll do those two.
I think some members here were a part of a working group earlier this morning on the SIP, so that might generate some questions. But just particularly on the analytical framework, it's just some really good examples of the tools that we have that support our local transport authority colleagues.
Do you want Sarah to give us a couple of minutes,
just a quick summary might be very useful. It might prompt you.
I don't want to cut you off, but we do have a second part two.
We do.
We need to get through.
That's all right, I can be brief. Thank you for the opportunity just to draw your attention to some of the work. The report, as you will have read, I'm sure, contains a number of different items. I think the key thing to stress is it's collective. So whilst individually there's some really good work going on, it's when you put it together collectively, we can really add significant value across the region, both to our own work, but also your work and any new emerging authorities. You heard about the regional travel survey. In answer to your question, Councillor Newton, the mobile network data is being procured. So once that's received, validated, it can be shared, and we can carry out all sorts of analysis to bring those two data sets together. The other data gap that has been identified by your officers in the past and across the industry, to be honest, is around freight data. So we're also procuring freight data from a company called MDS Transmodal, who are unfortunately a bit of a monopoly in this kind of thing. But again, that will give us the data around freight movements in the region to help us with the work like Mark was describing earlier. The other thing we're doing on behalf of the region is collating all the various local plan data, updating it from previous times we've done that again, so it provides one source of the truth across the region as to where all the local plans, where developments are proposed. Again, for our own work, but also available to you as well. In terms of tools, we are progressing with our building of our South East Highways Assignment Model, which again was a gap identified through previous work we did to sort of see what the region needs in terms of its modelling. Again, those tools are all available to you. In doing so, we are linking with National Highways because we know they are also updating their regional transport models, and so we're looking at any opportunities to work with them and share lessons learned or share data. We also have something called PODARIS, which I know a number of your authorities do already have, but again, we've procured it on behalf of the region, and if your officers wish to come in with us, then there will be a reduction in the cost to each individual authority. I think it goes from about £25,000 per authority to a range between 2 and 10,000, depending on how many users your authority wants. So again, bringing some efficiencies to the region. In terms of analysis that we've carried out, there was recently announced a review of major road network schemes by the Department for Transport, and it accompanied an enormous questionnaire that they required your officers to answer at quite short notice in August when most of them were on holiday. So we were able to carry out, again, using our analytical tools and the data we have, some analysis to help your officers provide them with the answers to some of the questions. And yeah, we used CHAM, our development log, our story map, and that transport-related social exclusion piece of work to do that and provide it to you. Just on something a little bit more niche and bespoke, but Joshua is also providing technical expertise to Wokingham Borough Council as they're seeking to update their transport model and helping them to be a more intelligent client, get the best offer they can from their consultants working on the work. So I think what I'd say in summary is there's lots of individual things going on, but when you bring it together collectively is where it really sort of adds value to the region.
Thank you. Thank you. I should stay there for a moment. If I do any other questions or comments on that? Again, there's an awful lot of work going on there, and it's good to see a report on it.
Yeah, sorry, Sarah.
That's right.
Yeah, we we very much in Berkshire appreciate the work that's going on. I think that should be reflected in our discussions, that we do feel the benefit of what's going on with Transport for South East and the work that's going on.
Excellent. It's good to hear.
Chairman, it might be worth, just because I'm aware that September stats on the Centre of Excellence have been really growing, I wouldn't mind if members are okay, just a quick minute from Emily on the Centre of Excellence, because that's the shop window, if you like, for all the support that comes into you.
We can do that quite easily. I just think we were going to do the SIP refresh before we get there. But we can't miss out. So are we happy to note the progress on the analytical framework? Thank you very much. On the business advisory, Keir, we've got the report. Is there anything you really wanted to hide?
I don't think so. I mean, I think one point I would just say is the two business co-chairs have asked us to do another summit. The one in Guildford was a big success, and I think there's real
Push for some more.
Yeah, to keep meeting and keep facilitating.
Thank you. I'm sure I couldn't make that one. I'm sure it was good. Simon.
Just very quickly, in the SIP meeting we had this morning, Business Advisory Group was raised and the important role this has got, but I think it's reflected in the report anyway, so that will come up later when we're discussing that.
Brilliant. I'm not trying to rush you. If there's anything you want, we've got time, but I'm also conscious we've got a lot to do after this. So again, we are noting and thanking the Business Advisory Group for their continued work. Please.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I meant to add something on this particular one as well, just to say what a superb job they're doing and what great participation. And whether within that business advisory group we need to have a look at the membership of that and whether it needs to be expanded slightly into sort of perhaps not so necessarily obvious, but they may be less obvious, but they are actually people who need to understand what we're doing. Yeah.
We can consider how best to do that.
Yeah.
I guess in conjunction.
I'm not giving you an answer there. I'm just sort of.
No, I guess in conjunction with Vince and. And Daniel. So we'll do that. Yeah. Thank you. And again, thank you. So SIP refresh, Sarah, please.
Yes, thank you. Again, very briefly, as Councillor Curry just mentioned, we had a meeting this morning of the Member Task and Finish Group. So that was Councillor Curry, Councillor Finesse and Councillor Dennis kindly came along. The role of that group is really to provide us with a high-level strategic direction and advice on how we can make sure the SIP lands best with government and other investors once it is completed. We really value the input that you've put in. This morning we discussed the process for sifting and assessing schemes. The outcome of that will go to all your officers for them to go through in detail and provide any feedback with. So that will be coming up very shortly. We also discussed around how we deal with the costs around the SIP and also the affordability, being very aware that the landscape financially is very different from when it was sort of 3-4 years ago. And again, what is an affordable SIP? What does that look like? And again, some very good advice from members there, we appreciate. And lastly, we discussed around the ongoing engagement, particularly how we engage yourselves as the board, and the suggestion from the Member Task and Finish Group that we have either a separate meeting before the December board meeting or as part of that meeting to discuss that. Also, crucial need to get the business community really engaged with what we're doing and ways, again, to discuss that, how to bring that group in. So I think, thank you to the members who've taken the time to come up, and we really appreciate that. That's it for the Strategic Investment Plan. It is a very tight timescale. The SIP itself is due to come to the board in March for your approval before the mayoral authority pre-election periods start.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Any questions or comments? Again, an awful lot of work going on, Sarah. Thank you very much. So we will approve, we recommend to comment and note, so we've done that. Delivering the SIP is, anything you want to add to that?
Again, say there was, first of all, on the funding that we've been provided to the various authorities around the room over the last 3 financial years, it's actually come to over £800,000. of money to develop business cases to build that pipeline of schemes for the region. So I think that has been hugely valuable. Obviously, subject to your discussions later this afternoon, we'll need to review perhaps how that works in the future, but there's been some really good work done there to bring forward schemes that otherwise wouldn't be able to. One of the things we have managed to do, particularly for the Kent to Gatwick scheme, is Transport for the South East acting as the project manager for the scheme, because none of the other authorities have that capacity. And in doing so, liaising with other stakeholders, and we've managed to lever in money from Gatwick Airport to help support that work as well. So we've managed to boost what we can do by money from Gatwick Airport as well. So I think that's worth noting. The Major Road Network Review, I mentioned earlier in terms of the analytical support we were able to provide, but we also convened all the scheme promoters from across the region and provided the opportunity to come together, discuss challenges that are very common, and I think that was one of the things we took from that. Lots of things that happen on an individual scheme basis can be put down to, oh, well, it's just that scheme. But again, when you look across the region, you can see there are patterns of things happening which are affecting the delivery of schemes. Some of them, I have to say, around the extensive timescales for Department for Transport review of business cases and then for ministerial decisions as well. And again, that's something we can then advocate for on behalf of the region to try and improve. Lastly, just around Roads Investment Strategy 3, I know National Highways aren't here today, but they published RIS 3, as it's known, on the 26th of August and then held a workshop. Again, Transport for South East officers attended and were able to put our points of view. One of the things that they did say is there's no funding for developing schemes likely in the next RIS period. So how does we as a region, we still have things we need to move forward, so how can we best do that? The other thing that was highlighted was around where schemes have previously been cancelled, and therefore they're not in the pipeline anymore. And we were able to make the case that just because something has been cancelled does not mean the problem has gone away. So although that specific scheme might not be on the drawing board anymore, there needs to be a replacement with, sorting out that issue in some way, shape or form, even if that's a different scheme. So again, we were able to sort of put views from across the region, and hopefully when the final RIS comes out, they will reflect on some of those issues.
Thanks, Sarah. Questions, comments? Thanks again for all the work that's going on. It does make you wonder just how much effort goes in, and actually how many people do actually know what's there. So that's another question for another day. Thank you. Technical programme. Mark, is there anything you wanted to add specifically, or are you happy to take questions?
Happy to say, just to emphasise the work that's going on in the development of the rail strategy, but we'll be bringing a report on that to the board meeting at the end of January.
Thank you. Any questions for Mark? I mean, again, I think the fact that we've got all of these strategies moving forward, whether it's infrastructure, EV, freight, logistics, it's just essential that we keep on top of it. Thanks, Simon, because I've just lost my page.
That's okay. Just one point, really, more than a question about the EV charging infrastructure. Just to say, at the local level where we are in Medway, the demand from residents and from businesses and such like is going up really fast. People are looking to have this in by tomorrow rather than over a period of time. So there's a lot of pressure there, and people really want to do this, but the pace of delivery is difficult.
Can I echo that? The pace is unbelievably difficult, and it's because of non-capacity on the grid. And that's what's delaying everything for us.
Excellent. All I've got to do now is get through this. All I've got to do is catch up with you now, because I lost the screen for a second. Can you tell us which is coming out? Oh, go on, Trevor. You can fill in for a second. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Dennis, for your point out. I think this is really a fundamental thing. We need great capacity. We're in a Brown Hope, we're driving forward with our rollout of EV charging, public EV charging, which is going well. I mean, we're at the start of a big journey. But yeah, across the region, I think the capacity of the grid is vital, and I think we need to feed this back to whichever department needs to hear it, is to say, how do we unlock this so we can really enable the pace that I think residents are stepping up to. Thank you.
Sorry, can I make the point? The on-street is not a problem, and it doesn't seem to be particularly at homes. It's when we ask for it in sort of what I call more commercial environments, dealing with fleets of cars, like, for example, our own, cars, vans, lorries, that's when we're seeing the issues. So where it's significant drawdowns, not individuals,
no,
okay?
So it's the higher charge.
It's the higher charge fare.
Right. Okay, that's useful to note. We have the recommendations up there, so we're happy. I think we've dealt with all of those. I found where I'm supposed to be at, which is 17, Centre of Excellence. And Emily, you're going to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've just got a couple of slides just to take you through on recent activity of the Centre of Excellence and also upcoming activity, and also just some of the monitoring and evaluation that we said we'd bring back to you. So if I just quickly move on to the activity since July, which was the last partnership board meeting, we've held 3 pieces of bespoke content. So we had the Engaging Gen Z, which saw 82 officers attend. This was a free webinar to attend and also provided by 11 for free. We also had a clinic provided by Joshua and also colleagues from University of Westminster and Southampton City Council. This particularly looked at how to undertake approaches to modelling related to active travel. This one was also provided for free and was of no charge to TFSC as well, and saw 52 people attend, which was a really good outcome. And finally, we also conducted a bespoke report on the impacts of devolution on buses. So this was a request from the TFSC Regional Bus Forum. So it looked at the cross-boundary infrastructure, cross-subsidy planning, and also opportunities and challenges for franchising. So the report itself has had many views on the Centre of Excellence itself, but we also held a launch webinar which detailed the report in more detail. And so that had 71 officers as well. So as you can see, over the summer there has been activity, but it is ramping up over the coming months with officers now back in work a little bit more. So we've got these ones coming up over the next few months. So we've got the CWIS consultation being provided by Active Travel England. So they want to hold a workshop with officers in our region on that consultation. So that'll be diarised for the 4th of November. As Joshua has already highlighted as well, we've got the launch of the Regional Travel Survey. So that will go into a little bit more detail on what that data provides and how to access the data. Next, we've also got an introduction to AI. So that one's done in conjunction with Steer, so utilising their subject matter experts. So we'll be doing 2 parts to this. So we'll have an introduction, as the capability survey did highlight that people felt that they were currently at a sort of novice level of skill capability. And then also moving into applications in transport planning, so people have the opportunity to hear both levels of detail. And that will also be followed on by a workshop which people can register for, which will go into even more detail. So again, we're just trying to target it to the right level of capability. Next, we've got an environmental assessments and support transport analysis. So this one is held on the 26th of November. Again, this is being held with Steer subject matter experts. So this one has been developed with the steering group of the Centre of Excellence, but also specifically with officers from Surrey, just with some of the work that they've got going on that they just have a challenge with. And we're really looking forward to the University of Leeds course that will be hosted on the 1st of December. So currently we've got around 20 officers. So if you do have anybody in your region that you would like to attend, then do get in touch. So this one will be a data science training course, a full day in London. And finally, on the 9th of December, we've also got the transport assessments and associated analysis for spatial planning. Again, this one was designed in conjunction with the steering group and specifically alongside with Surrey. So these are the ones that we've just got diarised, but we've also got a very close to being commissioned package of support related to awareness of emerging technologies and also related to prioritisation of transport schemes. So hoping to see a lot more content coming up between now and the end of March. There will also be further support packages being developed, but they're just yet to be commissioned. And just really quickly touching on the monitoring and evaluation, this was a request from the July Partnership Board, so we just thought we'd bring it to you here today. So since that partnership board, we've seen 44 new users, so that's a 13% increase. I think that brings us in total to 371 users on the site now. 81 new pieces of content have been uploaded since July, so that's a 30% increase. We've had 893 site sessions, so there's 158 more than the previous 4 months, so that's really good to see considering those were summer months, so people are really utilising the content and getting value from it. And we've also estimated that through those webinars, we've saved local authorities £280,000. We appreciate that this is sort of very rudimentary working out, but it's looking at market value of what those webinars would have cost if each of the LTAs were to have commissioned them. So just really quickly showing some of the data in a lovely graph. So as you can see there in September, it really does spike up. People are accessing the chat forum a lot more. They're interacting with the bus report that was just outlined, and continued engagement does happen on the carbon assessment playbook as well. So it's just a really good graph to see. On this slide here, you can see the individual people, so where they're visiting. So the top top table there just shows where people are individually visiting. So the top page of the Centre of Excellence continues to be the webinars. And as you can see on the bottom one, the specific pages, people are still continuing to visit the carbon assessment playbook as well. So over the past 4 months, we've had 71 visits. And just finally, as we mentioned, there was a big surge in chat forum interaction, which is really good. It was one of the key requests from the local transport authorities when we were developing the site. So it's good to see that that's just currently being uptaken now as well. So hopefully we can continue to report back on this as you can see those numbers to grow. Happy to take any questions.
Emily, thank you. Questions for Emily?
Comment, really. A couple of comments, really. One, a serious one, which is really, this is going to be, it's going to be one of your selling points for the future. So this is really good to see, and obviously it'll get more sophisticated in terms of its reporting, but, this is what, when we become devolved, is what is going to be the TFSC's, one of its major selling points anyway. So I was pleased to see that report. And then the more flippant comment was, what did Zen's 70 engagement look like apart from using TikTok?
That was referenced quite a lot, actually. There was quite a lot of information within there, actually. It was talking different tactics about how to get them to respond to consultations specifically. There is actually the recorded webinar, so I can share it with colleagues who might be interested in seeing that, because it was actually a very interesting and informative session.
Okay. Thank you. It's good to see just how busy the Centre of Excellence is becoming. So, again, well done and thank you very much. Jeff, it's over to you, I think, for your forum.
At long last.
Sorry to keep you.
No, it's all right. You've got a lot on the agenda. It's the board can see, if you look at all that's been going on with the Transport Forum, that groups within that still have a lot of momentum, with strong work taking place in TFSE's Bus Forum, Funding and Finance Group and Universities Group. But some of the groups have less momentum and less clear a role as TFSE's, I can't even say it now, work programme evolves. So TFSE is currently rationalising the scope and activities of its thematic groups to make sure they're being satisfactorily covered for everybody, not just a few people round the table. Alongside this review, I say review whether TFSE retains its advisory panel and what form it takes, if possible, ahead of the next partnership board. I don't think it will be tricky to do it before the next partnership board, but I feel we've marked time for a while now, and we need to go into the to the action area and try and do things. And of course, in that regard, we would want to ask the board to agree further work to set out the high-level work plan and funding request for the 2026-27 transition year, because that's going to be a big one with everybody else up there for competition, and also go forward and as a potential operating model for after March 2027 to get that up and in place and working out what is the most important way. And I think that's the sort of main thing. I don't want to just go back and refigure the words that I've just been using, but I think we've left what's the right word? We haven't left it behind, but I don't think we've carried enough of it to be clear about on several of the subjects that have been talked around the table so far today. Okay, so we're awake.
Yeah.
We want to do more about it because nobody really knows how it's going to evolve over the next year or two.
I think we're all in that same place, Jeff. But we may know a bit more as we decide the way forward here. Yeah. But quite clearly, it's important that we do engage with the people that we've got on board, because otherwise we lose them by the way. So I think that's a very good point we can take. Are there any other questions or comments for Jeff? Again, thank you for your continued leading of what is quite a massive group in some ways, and to keep everybody with even one agenda item that's actually their field is quite a difficult task. I can see that. So well done, well done. Communications, James. Is there anything you want to add, or?
Not really. I don't have a fancy presentation like Emily.
Okay.
So, really, what we've got is being able to be working on comms strategy, and I guess what we've got is a campaign coming up now. We've got some work to do on strategies in the past. So,
yep.
We've been looking at the missions, and so we've got a comms campaign basically on social media. We're looking at a mission week in terms of what it means to try and bring it to life a little bit more. So watch out for that coming up for next week.
Brilliant. Any questions or comments for James? I mean, I think after we get some certainty about where we're going, I think the message about how important TFSE is, the role we've got, is going to be a continued message to, I think, an even wider audience, if I'm honest. Because I think at the moment we've got those that are interested, but I think we may have to broaden that. But let's see where that takes us. Joy.
I was just, thinking about time, but I was just wondering, it doesn't actually say how many followers we have on Facebook or on Twitter, because I was wondering whether, in fact, whether those are useful forms of communication or whether we should stick just to the LinkedIn sort of side and perhaps something else. Just a thought.
Do we?
LinkedIn, we've got... it
says LinkedIn, but it doesn't say...
Yeah, we've got 1,435 followers, up 4% from July forward. Our target for the year is 1,500, so we've made some progress, which is great.
Right.
Facebook is fairly static. I don't have the number, but it's not very many.
No.
But the engagement's better on Facebook for some reason, which is quite interesting. And X, we sort of... but it's still a key channel. We want
yep.
social, local authorities to use it as a key channel. So we've not completely forgotten about it, but I think a year ago it was a lot more responsive than it was, than it is now, unfortunately. But definitely, I think social media is something that we'll keep pushing stuff to and we'll keep working on. But I agree with you in terms of we'll be happy to grow that audience in some way. We're trying to retweet some of the work that we're doing with authorities as well. So trying to be a bit more responsive over the next, in the last year or so coming up for next year.
Okay. Nothing else to add? Well, thanks again, James. We've done, I think, what it says on the tin. Which brings us to AOB. Is there any other business that anyone wants to raise? Now is your chance. Going around the room. Anything down the back? Anything from you, Rupert? So, date of the next meeting is Thursday, 29th of January, 2 till 5, in person here. So, that was originally planned for the 2nd of February, but it's been moved to 29th to accommodate diaries. And then you're going to say... we're going to go on to restricted. Oh, I've got to
I was going to go on to just mention that bit.
Oh, sorry. There is an extraordinary partnership board meeting to discuss TFSE's business plan for next year, may be scheduled in December, subject to the outcome of the discussions of the future status of TFSE, which was the meeting that will be, and that meeting will be held virtually over Microsoft Teams.
The Chairman, if I may, I think given where we are with the SIP, you might have a hole in your diaries. We might try and do it in person.
Yeah, that's what we thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know, and I'm really grateful for everybody coming to London, but it's something about for these meaty items, being face to face is a good way of doing it. But that hole will appear in your diaries for the 15th, if it hasn't done already.
Brilliant. If there is no other business, do I have to move part 2 and all of that now? All right. So we now have a restricted board item because of the discussion. The decisions made by the board will impact directly on the staff of TFSE. The board are required to pass a formal resolution stating that the reason for the exclusion of the press and the public. This item will be held in private in accordance with paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. And in doing this, we will wish to ensure that the live stream has ended and we will allow time for the TFSE Secretariat to leave the room before discussing the next item. Thanks.
Have a quick break if you want.
Yes, we take a couple of minutes, but can I thank you all seriously for another heavy day.